Happy Tuesday, everybody. Weather's looking nice outside once again. Pretty cool. Hope it's nice where you're at. Anyway, we're going to pick up today where I left off yesterday, talking about the Mormon cult. And to play it fair, all organized religions are cults, although some of them are more frightening than others. I'd have to say that Mormonism has quite a few others beat as far as that goes. It's very scary stuff. Their teachings are just way, way out there. Again, I don't trust any of them. They're all corrupt. They're all money-grubbing scumbags. But Mormonism has aspirations of... well, just like its protege, the Masons, you know, that they have aspirations of global domination. They seek political power, and they certainly have attained that in Utah. You know, it's frightening, guys, to get any religion mingled with government, but especially one that has had a history of inserting itself in the political arena. And that certainly is true of Mormonism. Anyway, but you know, so closely is Mormonism allied and paralleled with Freemasonry that you know, you can essentially call it a branch of Freemasonry. Interestingly enough, Brigham Young University is one of the main recruiting grounds for the CIA. Isn't that interesting? Why do you suppose that is? Anyway, today I'm going to pick up talking about the Book of Mormon itself and a lot of the downright ridiculous statements that are therein. I'm going to be citing multiple examples of that. And like I said, you know, if you know any Mormons, or even if you don't know any, you might down the line get to know some, so, you know, feel free to request the transcripts, and I'll send them off to you, truthhertzradio@aol.com, again, spell Hertz, H-E-R-T-Z, and just tell me you want the Mormon transcripts, I'll send them off to you. You know, it's great to have this stuff on hand. You can share it with people and hopefully open their eyes and get them out of this deadly, dangerous, and if nothing else, you know, life quality diminishing cult. If nothing else, it'll do that. Definitely do that to you. It diminishes your quality of life. It totally controls everything you do. Now, there's no question, minimizing your coffee intake is a good thing. You know, caffeine is not good for you. Drinking certainly isn't good. But, you know, to be fanatical about it and cut it out altogether, there's no burden, you know, placed on you other than what your own corrupt church leaders have thought up in their own crooked minds. The same with Adventism, you know. You've got some real fanatics that don't even eat meat. They won't even drink milk. A lot of them are vegans, and they think that there's some religious connotation to it, that God requires it. And all the while, there's your leaders indulging themselves in meat and dairy products. What a disgusting, sick joke organized religion is. Anyway, guys, I'll rip the lid off the Book of Mormon when we get back. Stick with us. All right, guys, welcome back. Just a reminder, tomorrow I got a guest coming on, a repeating guest. I've had him on at least 2-3 times before. Cushman Cunningham. He's the author of the 2-book set, The Secret Empire, talking about the behind-the-scenes Zionist control, elitist Jew control of the entire planet, guys. It's been going on for at least the past 2,500 years. Every major fiasco in history, if you look behind the scenes, you'll see their hidden hand every single time. They have weaseled their way into financing every war, every revolution, you name it. It's unbelievable. And the more I study, the more I'm finding out that to be the case. It's far more pervasive than I ever imagined. It's unbelievable. And again, naturally, this is why this seems so strange to people. Where are you getting this crazy stuff from? It's because these scumbags own the publishing houses that print the textbooks. So naturally, conveniently, these facts are left out. For crying out loud, they even financed the frickin' Crusades, for crying out loud. And so all we know about the Crusades from the textbooks is that, they were just battles between the Christians and Muslims, not realizing that it was the elitist Jew bankers behind the scenes that were pinning the Christians and the Muslims against each other, hoping that all the while they're getting rich from these wars, hoping that they would wipe each other out so they could emerge as the uncontested masters of the world. Ay, ay, ay. But anyway, I'll save that stuff for another show. I got a whole show on the Crusades and the hidden hand behind the scenes. My. Boy, are we lied to, guys, about everything. Everything. Anyway, coming back to the Book of Mormon. In the Book of Mormon, Smith has a prophet called Nephi, who supposedly lived 600 to 500 BC, quoting from the book of Matthew, Luke, and from the letters of Peter and Paul, verbatim, centuries before they wrote their contributions to the New Testament. Did you catch that? This is how ridiculous the Book of Mormon is, and again, how people swallow this stuff without even, examining it closely under the microscope. But again, that's how all organized religion is. Any of them. If you examine them closely, you'll see what a stenching fraud they all are. Anytime anybody does examining of any of these cults, it's to just examine the other ones, but never their own. Oh no, mine is the true one. All those other ones are false, but mine is the true one. Unbelievable. If you could step outside your delirium for 5 minutes and, subject your own cult to the same scrutiny that you apply to others, you'd see that yours fails the truth test too. They all do. They're all a joke. But in any case, we'll stick with Mormonism for today. But notice what I just said, guys. It's unbelievable. Smith, in his Book of Mormon, has this prophet that he made up called Nephi, who supposedly lived between 600 and 500 BC, quoting verbatim from the books of Matthew, Luke, from Peter's epistles, from Paul's epistles, blah, blah, blah. And, this prophet supposedly lived 500 to 600 years before they even existed. How can how can this alleged prophet be quoting from them when they weren't even born yet? Ay, ay, ay. But if that's not strange enough, the wording is all in 17th century King James English. With the these and the thous. Again, why did he do that? Obviously because he wanted his made-up story fairy tale book to sound like it was biblical. In the 19th century, the King James was the predominant translation in circulation. So he wanted his phony Book of Mormon to have the same flavor as the Bible, so it would be, sound like it was inspired, just like the Bible. And so, he had it, he wrote it to include the these and the thous, the 17th century, it's like these televangelists, a lot of them, like one of my favorites, Pat Robertson. When he's in the middle of one of his little prayer stunts, he'll throw the these and the thous in there. In fact, a lot of ministers will do that. A lot of televangelists will do that. And why? Do we speak today with thee and thou? Oh, my dearest beloved wife, I do lovest thee to the highest of heavens. No, we don't talk that way. But they do it in the context of a prayer because, again, they want it to sound like, they're inspired of God because doesn't your Bible use these and thous? Did you ever hear Pat Robertson? Tune him in sometime if you want a few laughs. Lord, we beseech thee, do pour thy blessings upon our brow. Shut up. Can't stand that monkey. Anyway, when Smith quotes the Bible verbatim, sometimes whole chapters are cited at a time from both the Old Testament and the New Testament, with the exact same chapter and verse divisions. He also puts the same words in italics that are found in italics in the King James Version. I mean, it's unbelievable. You talk about plagiarism. That's plagiarism at its finest. He'll go on, verse after verse, sometimes chapter after chapter, just stealing whole passages out of the King James Version. Literally. Again, he uses, for those that don't know, in the King James Version, when you have words in italics, it was the translators, the King James translators in the 17th century, who put those italics words in there. They're not, it means they weren't in the original Greek. Sometimes when you translate word for word, it doesn't make sense. So to get it to make sense, you have to add words sometimes so it flows better and sounds smoother. It doesn't, or at least it's not supposed to change the meaning, and usually it doesn't, but nevertheless, you have to add words that aren't in the original Greek so it translates more smoothly. So when the translators did this of the King James Bible, they would put them in italics to indicate to the reader that, this isn't in the Greek, we added it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so here comes Joseph Smith, supposedly under the inspiration of God, writing his Book of Mormon, copying verse after verse, chapter after chapter out of the Bible, and, the King James Bible. And when he does it, again, he even includes the italicized words and puts them in italics, showing you how pervasive his plagiarism was. And even the parts where he's not copying from the Old and New Testament, he had to keep in line with the King James that he was copying from, so he uses the Old King's English. It's friggin' unbelievable. But anyway, lots more monkey business to expose with the Book of Mormon when we get back, guys. Stick with us. All right, guys, welcome back. I was just talking about Joseph Smith's plagiarism, copying verbatim, word for word from the Old and New Testaments, even quoting from people centuries before they were even born. Prophets that supposedly lived centuries before the apostles and yet quoting from the apostles. Well, how ridiculous. But this makes it even more ridiculous. Understand that Smitty claimed to have received the Book of Mormon. He found some plates, some golden plates in Palmyra, New York. Plates which disappeared, by the way, conveniently. He was never able to produce them. Oh, they vanished, but I did find them. I dug them up. Yeah, whatever. But anyway, he claimed that an angel helped him translate the plates, and he gave him these magic stones, and when he looked through the stones and passed them over the plates, presto, ta-da! He was able to translate this long-lost ancient language into the current Book of Mormon. But again, this was all done magically by the power of the angel and the power of the magic stones. Why the precise plagiarism? And why the problem of having quotes from the apostles from somebody who supposedly lived hundreds of years before him? It's just so ridiculous, guys. How can people be so mindless to not see this stuff? But like I said, this doesn't just apply to Mormonism. I spent a show and a half a couple of weeks ago talking about Adventism and their phony prophetess Ellen White. You look at all the problems with that wench in her writing. How can people be so mindless and not see this? They'll say, oh, if Ellen White ever contradicted the Bible, that would prove her to be a false prophet. If she ever contradicted herself, that would prove she was a false prophet. If she ever gave false prophecies that didn't come true, that would prove she's a false prophet. She did all of those and more. But yet when you show them to them, oh, no, no, you know, it's like mainstream science, you know, oh, if we ever found any human remains next to dinosaur remains, I would just throw out all of our theories. Well, they find this stuff all the time. But when you present it to them, oh, that's not human. It only looks human. Oh, God almighty. Again, guys, you know, there's precious little difference between science, what is called science today, and organized religion. You know, the beliefs of modern science really are like religious beliefs. They're sacred. You don't question them. You're a blasphemer if you question them. They're sacred and untouchable, but they're full of crap. It's astonishing that, you know, mainstream science, for the most part, are basically atheists. It's astonishing because they're very religious in their beliefs. Anyway, so here we have, you know, Joseph Smith claiming that he was inspired by this angel Moroni. Very interesting. You take the I off the end of that, and what do you get? You get moron. Anyway, this angel Moroni, he just made these names up the top of his head, his twisted drunk head. But anyway, in the book of Ether, one of the books of, you know, he was so fond of alcohol, he had to name one of the books in his Book of Mormon, Ether. Anyway, in the book of Ether, the Jaredites, another name he made up, the Jaredites were instructed by God to build barges for the trip across the Atlantic to the Americas. And they were said to have been driven across the Atlantic by, quote, furious wind that never ceased to blow. Well, that's very interesting because we're told in the book of Ether that it took 344 days to cross the Atlantic. And yet they were carried across the Atlantic by, once again, a fierce or furious wind that did never cease to blow. Guys, 344 days with a fierce wind carrying them across, you know, at only 3 knots per hour. They would have been able literally to circle the entire planet during such a time span. Ooh, boy, his math figures were way off on that one. He should have consulted, you know, a geographer or something when he wrote this phony book. Anyway, what a scam. But again, I have to say, I don't argue with the Mormons that there were ancient cultures. In fact, every ancient culture at one time or other did, in fact, cross the Atlantic and or the Pacific to reach the Americas in ancient times. Absolutely true. And, you know, the Mormons have done some great work to help bring that to light. But that doesn't prove the flippin' Book of Mormon. There's never been anything found anywhere in South America or anywhere else in the Americas, for that matter, to substantiate what's written in the Book of Mormon. Nothing. None of the cities mentioned. There's no coins. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But there have been tons of finds which show that, you know, the old world cultures have been here in the ancient past. I've talked about that quite a bit. I'll have many other shows on that subject in the future. There's no question that that took place. But again, it doesn't prove the flippin' Book of Mormon. Anyway, moving on here. Let's look at some other incongruities with Joseph Smith's fake Bible here. It's loaded with misspelled words, for example, which is really problematic because, again, the whole thing is supposed to have been divinely inspired. You've got, for example, the word journeyed. Instead of Journeyed, you have Journed. You find this in 1 Nephi 4:38, 5 verse 6, 7 verse 6, 18 verse 25, 2 Nephi 5:7, Omni 1:16. Interesting that he would have a book called Omni. So bizarre. Anyway, tons of other words misspelled. He's got bellowses instead of bellows, you know, B-E-L-L-O-W-S. He has bellowses. Or, yeah, bellowses. B-E-L-L-O-W-S-E-S. Bellowses. First Nephi 17:11. Not only was he inspired, but he was a literary genius as well. The word feeding, instead of F-E-E-D-I-N-G, he has F-E-A-D-I-N-G in the book of Enos, chapter 1, verse 20. Then he's got, instead of saith, like in the King James, S-A-I-T-H, he's got sayeth, S-A-Y-E-T-H, in Mosiah 12:21. And let's see, babblings with one B instead of B-A-B-B-L-I-N-G. He's got B-A-B-L-I-N-G-S. That's in Alma 1:32. Tempels instead of temples, T-E-M-P-E-L-S. That's in Alma 16:13. I mean, this is pathetic, guys. Instead of years, Y-E-A-R-S, he's got yars, Y-A-R-S, Alma 19:16. And I love this one, frenzied, which of course should be F-R-E-N-Z-I-E-D. He's got P-H-R-E-N-S-I-E-D. Alma 30:16. My goodness, it just goes on and on. I'll have a few more of these, and I'll go on to some other discussions of this ridiculous book when we get back, guys. Stick with us. All right, folks, welcome back. I just cranked up my AC. I hope it's not sounding too loud here over the microphone. Oh, it's just got way too hot this morning. Anyway, let's look at some other ridiculously misspelt words in the book of Mormon. In Alma 53:23, he spells eighth, as in the number 8, instead of E-I-G-H-T-H, he has it as E-I-T-H. Oh, my dear God. Come on, folks. Come on. I wish any Mormons out there listening in would give me a call. You know, deal with it. The guy was a fraud. Snap out of it. Just like your government is lying to you and suckering you, your phony religious leaders are doing the same flipping thing. Oh, man, there's no exception to the rule, especially in our modern age, guys. There's no exception to the rule. All institutions are corrupt. All of them. I can't stress it enough. All institutions are corrupt. Oh, great. Okay, I guess one of my listeners, thanks, buddy. I guess the AC isn't coming through too loud, so that's good. They're all corrupt. All institutions. I don't care what it is. If you follow any institution today, you're going to get suckered. If not today, tomorrow, or the next day. Sooner or later, they're going to lie to you about something and take you for a ride. That's what institutions are designed to do. Unfortunately, even the ones that start out on a sincere premise eventually become corrupted. All of them. You know, I mentioned before, a friend of mine belonged to a local archaeological club. You know, we go around and we mostly do it on our own, but, you know, on the occasions you go with the group, exploring in the woods, looking for ancient native stoneworks. You know, they got to even control that, guys. They want to limit you to how you interpret what you're seeing, and any alternative thought is ridiculed. It's so childish and so sleazy. But every field of study plays this game. You must conform to the status quo, and if you don't, oh, you're a silly, petty little fool. Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. You know, any real education system would teach you to do just that, to think for yourself, to let your mind soar. That's how civilizations advance forward, guys. But no, our civilization is stagnant and rotting from within because they teach you, and then they supplement that phony teaching with dumbing down doped-up drugs, you know, to be stagnant, to go along with the system. Don't think outside the box. All the thinking's been done for you. I read your quote yesterday where a former Mormon church leader says exactly that. The thinking has already been done. Don't do it. We've already done it. Unfriggin' believable. Anybody who falls for that, once again, you deserve to be deceived. Anyway, a few more examples here of misspelled words in the Book of Mormon. From Alma 6034, instead of adhere, A-D-H-E-R-E, he spells it A-D-H-E-A-R, like, hearing, sound, hear, adhere. Instead of Edith, E-A-T-E-T-H, the, King James version of eat, he has Ethith, E-A-T-H-E-T-H. I guess the guy had a lisp with something. How silly. That's in 3rd Nephi 20, verse 8. And then finally, here's another one. Instead of re-award, R-E, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. What is this word supposed to be? I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. It looks like I typed it in wrong. I gotta go back and fix that.
Oh, I made a mistake myself. I must not be inspired.
I think it was supposed to be reward. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I guess, no, I got it now. I wasn't reading it right. Yeah, rearward, which really isn't a word that we use anymore, but I guess in the 19th century, rearward, R-E-A-R-W-A-R-D. It's the opposite of forward, I guess. Anyway, he spelt it R-E-R-E-W-A-R-D. Reward. Whatever. Oh, what a bunch of stupidity. Anyway, let's go on to a different aspect of the Book of Mormon here. Grammatical errors. Well, what we looked at really comes under that same banner, but those dealt with misspellings. But now let's look at some incredible sloppy choice of wording here in his sentence structures. I'll just run down some examples. I'm not going to cite what it's from. It'll take too long, but these are just a few samplings here. It were easy to guide them instead of it was easy. I were about to write them. The priests, plural, the priests was not to depend. They was angry with me. There is, save it be, 2 churches. There is 2 churches. And oh yeah, save it be. I love that saying. Whatever. Things which is not seen instead of are. Ammon and Lamoni was a journeying. And you gotta love that term, a journeying. What an idiot. This guy was amongst other things, he was a flippin' drunk. He was probably drunk when he wrote this stuff. He found Maloki a preaching. A journeying and a preaching. I was a preaching. Oh, dear God. Behold, for none of these I cannot hope. For none of these I cannot hope. Talk about a double negative. And Mosiah, nor the people of Mosiah, could not understand them. Oh, man. It should be neither Messiah nor the people. Oh, whatever. This guy's just... Look at this stuff, guys. This is supposed to be inspired. And now behold, the Lamanites could not retreat neither way. Could not retreat neither way. Yea, if my days could have been in them days. And it came to pass that there was certain men passing by. Let's see. That all might see the writing which he had wrote. Give me a break. Let's see. I would cite your minds forward to the time when the Lord gave these commandments. Cite your minds forward. They did not fight against God no more. Sounds like a 2-year-old kid on the street, or some white trash in some ghetto or something. That's what kind of grammatical skills this guy had. I have wrote to them. I were about to write to them. I mean, the Book of Mormon is loaded with this stuff, guys. The gates of hell is, the multitude had all eat, not eaten. I, Moroni, have written the words which was commanded. So now, not only does Joseph Smith have some grammatical glitches in his lingo here, but now the angel himself, Moroni. Here's another one. The law had ought to be done away. The law had ought to be done away. Which was wrote upon the plates. Yeah, the plates that disappeared. Adam and Eve, which was our first parents. Oh. Who was the most foremost among them? I love that one. Who was the most foremost among them? You gotta laugh, man. It's a flippin' scam. What a joke. Let's see. That there might not be no more sorrow. And this he done. He done. In the first chapter alone of the Book of Mormon, guys, which is 1 Nephi chapter 1, which has only 20 verses, there are no less than 4 such errors. 2 examples are, my father had read and saw, and the tender mercies of the Lord is. Again, these are just a few samplings. There's hundreds like these in the Book of Mormon. Once again, I appeal to, any Mormon listeners out there, if you have any semblance of common sense, you have got to realize that this nullifies that ridiculous book as being inspired of God. Come out of the phony thing. You're being suckered. All right, guys, another short break. I'll jump into some more when we get back. Stick with us. All right, folks, welcome back. Continuing on here with our expose of the phony Book of Mormon. Listen to this one. This is one of my favorite passages. This is from 4th Nephi, verse 6. It says, listen to this, man. What a joke. Listen to this. And thus did the 30 and 8 years pass away. Also the 30 and 9th, and 40 and 1st, and 40 and 2nd. Yea, even unto 40 and 9 years had passed away. And also the 50 and 2nd. Yea, and even unto the 50 and 9 years had passed away. Woo-hoo-hoo! Yeah! Yeah! That's inspired of God!
Oh, give me a copy.
Unfriggin' believable. You think that would do it right there? You point this out to the average Mormon and say, look at this. This is friggin' ridiculous. You gotta be a numbskull to put. And that would do it. They'd say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this book is so ridiculous. And that would be the end of it. They'd walk away and say, never again am I going to pick that thing up and put any confidence in it. I can clearly see it's a scam. No, it doesn't work. It's like pointing out the problems with Ellen White to your average Adventist. You're lucky if 1 in 100. Yay! 1 in 1,000. Yay! 1 in 1,001. Even unto 1 in 1,002. Seriously, guys, you're lucky if probably 1 in 1,000 will even listen to you. Maybe 1 in 5,000 will actually say, you know what? I can clearly see this thing's screwed up. I'm done with it. Most of them, the overwhelming majority of them, are just going to look at you and go, and continue to chomp on their mutton and follow like the blind little sheep, the blind little cattle that they are. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, for all it's worth, I'll continue my exposition here. Fabricated words. Here's another little interesting collection of glitches in the Book of Mormon. Words that he just outright made up. Preparator instead of preparer. Preparator. That's in 1 Nephi 15:35. It still exists in the later editions, by the way. Some of these things were taken out in later editions. A riven. instead of arrive. Alma 20, verse 30. Numerority. Who knows? There is no word there. He just made that up completely. He wasn't even trying to grasp for something that existed. He was trying to get across the idea of a vast number. So he came up with the word numerority. Here's another one. Let's see. Flatter. For allure and instigate. Instead of using the word allure or instigate, he used flatter in a totally wrong context. So there is a word flatter, but not the way he used it. Let's see. Enormity, or enormous. Let's see. Ezrom and Sanin and Lima. Oh, these are words he made up for coins. It's totally made up. But then again, he made up almost everything in that book. You know, all the names of places, the names of people. Scimitar, a sword. Instead of the word sword, he had them calling it a scimitar. Where did he get this crap? Oh, I love this one. He gave the name of a plant, Neas, N-E-A-S. Referred to a crop as a sheum, S-H-E-U-M. Let's see. A curulum and a cummins. These are names that he gave to unknown, unspecified animals, whatever they were supposed to be. Again, guys, he just made these things up. He probably had a bunch of Scrabble letters that he tossed up in the air, and, you know, whatever way they fell. Oh, this is a good word. I'll throw that in there. If Scrabble even existed back then. But anyway, changes in context. This is another problem in the Book of Mormon we find. In Helaman 1:16, there's an incomplete sentence that shows that the writer of the Book of Mormon was unfamiliar with proper sentence structure. Well, as if we didn't know that already, but in an effort to correct this embarrassing problem, 2 words were removed from the text, and a period was changed to a comma. The original read, quote, who was the son of Amoron. He liked that moron thing. He has it in Moroni and then Amoron. I don't know if, you know, that applied to himself being a moron, or if he thought his gullible followers that read his phony book were morons. I would apply that to both, but in any case, the text continues. Now, Tobiah, supposing that, the corrected edition, however, reads, who was the son of Amoron, supposing that, you know, with a comma. Just totally nonsensical, incongruent sentence structuring all over the place in the Book of Mormon. Obviously, guys, you know, this is merely a typographical change, but a change to correct bad sentence structure. Would God have allowed such a mistake to be permitted? You know, but then again, like I said, you have problems like this in the Bible itself, the Old Testament, and believe it or not, in the New. You know, I hate to tell you that, guys, but it is true. I'll have a future show on that. There's a passage in the Book of Romans where Paul goes off onto this nonsensical tangent. No translation can capture the meaning of it. It's not even understood what exactly he was trying to say. He just stops himself in mid-sentence and then goes on into something else. So it's not just the Book of Mormon that does this. In any case, Mosiah 21:28 contains a very serious mistake. In this passage, King Benjamin is spoken of as being alive. Apparently, however, the writer forgot that 15 chapters earlier, he recorded this man's death. He had to be drunk when he wrote this. What he meant to write was King Messiah, the second edition of the Book of Change. How did such a conspicuous mistake slip into a translation being overseen by the power of God? In making this change, the Mormon Church has admitted the error. Of course, they don't advertise it. They try to talk around that or avoid discussion of it. It's like the Adventist Church. They do it all the time. In fact, I didn't even mention this. I did my show a couple weeks ago, but there's a book that was originally published when she was alive called Life Sketches of the Apostle Paul. It's no longer in print because it was discovered that it was so completely plagiarized by another book written in England at the time. There was a lawsuit threatened, and so they pulled it out of publication. I actually have a copy of it, though, because back in the 1960s, someone found an old copy of it and was all excited. Ooh, a lost book of Ellen White. And so they republished it and circulated it until, the original story was discovered about the lawsuit. And so they quickly pulled it out of circulation and pulled all the copies they had remaining on their shelves. But I happened to have gotten a hold of one of those copies that didn't get, called out of circulation. Somebody had bought it and whatever, it got handed down. So I like to share that with my Adventist friends. Look at this book. It's published by an Adventist publishing house, Review and Herald. And, or I think it was Pacific Press, whatever. And, and there's Ellen White's name on it. How come this isn't being sold at your Adventist book centers? And, boy, it gets some eyebrows raised, but unfortunately, most of them, they don't pursue it. They don't, they just write it off because they can't let go of their beloved false prophet. Oh, can't do that. All right, folks, another break. Be right back. All right, people, welcome back. Second hour here. If we were dealing with just a few mistakes, that would be one thing. But there are hundreds and hundreds of, and not even minor ones either. These are major blunders. How in God's name can people swallow this stuff, guys? There's some bizarre, twisted psychology at work here where people will absolutely put the blinders on and just won't hear. I guess I have to be a little understanding because up until recently I was a dupe of the Old Testament. I bought the Old Testament, which is nothing but Jewish mysticism or mythology, I should say. That's all it is, folks. Jewish mythology. And yet I bought the thing hook, line, and sinker. I had some people come to me and say, oh, wait a minute now, if you're talking about the text that revealed God to be angry and vengeful, the explanation that a lot have given, and a lot of people have come to this conclusion to try to justify continuing to believe in the Old Testament, is that when God commanded the slaughtering of, the Canaanites and the Hittites, everything that breathes, including women and children, suckling infants, on and on and on, they'll say that, oh, well, that's just because they were Nephilim, it's a long story, but basically they believe, the Nephilim were half demon, half human, where the seed of man was mixed with the, how does it go now? It's a passage in Genesis. I'm trying to remember how it goes now. Anyway, the seed of men mixed with the daughters of women or whatever. But the Nephilim, or the seed of the Nephilim mixing with, I don't know. I forget how it goes. But anyway, it's the idea that, demons had mated with humans. And that's the way to explain that God was commanding the murder of these individuals because they were descended from the Nephilim. And but that doesn't answer the problem. That doesn't solve the problem. Because, as I pointed out on my show a couple months back when I talked about the evil God of the Old Testament, this evil God doesn't just command the murdering of baby, Canaanites and Hittites and whatnot. He commanded the murder of fellow Israelites. If they broke the Sabbath, for example. If they disobeyed their parents, they're to be stoned to death. Children. Not just adult children of parents, young children. If they disobeyed their parents, they were to be stoned. So this God doesn't, we're not just dealing with commanding the killing of what could be called Nephilim, half human, half demon. I don't even really subscribe to that idea anyway. There's too many problems with it. When you're dealing with the seed of something, biblically speaking, it doesn't necessarily imply a literal physical genetic descendancy. The seed of someone can just be a reference to their spiritual affiliation. Christ said to the Pharisees, "You're children of the devil." He didn't mean literal descendants of Satan. He meant, spiritually connected to them. Anyway, guys, pick up there and we get back. Stick with us. All right, people, welcome back. I looked it up during the break, this Genesis passage. I'm not going to spend time on this now, but just to read it, I couldn't, in my mind, remember how the wording went. It says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came and mingled with the daughters of men. So, a whole mountain of belief is created around this one passage that really, you can't do that, folks. You can't draw this huge conclusion based on one passage. But here's essentially what they say. The Nephilim were part demon and part human, and so they mixed with the daughters of men. First of all, this verse really isn't even saying that. Second of all, the Nephilim are... Where do you get the idea that they were part demon, part human? To me, the Nephilim were just giants. And what were these giants? I got future shows coming up on that as to who they were and why they were giant. I'm not going to go into that now, but, this is, I just don't buy it. The sons of God and daughters of men doesn't imply some, mix between angelic, whether fallen or unfallen, and humans. Sons of God can simply be referring to people who follow God, and daughters of men can be people who follow man. Those who aren't followers of God. It's anyway, that's another story. But that was the verse that I couldn't think of. In any case, even if their interpretation of that verse was correct, it still doesn't explain this tyrannical God of the Old Testament. It doesn't explain it at all. As I stated, God did not just command in the Old Testament the murdering of Canaanite and other children that could be said to have been descendants of the Nephilim and thus part demon, quote unquote. God commands the murder of Israelites, supposedly his own people. So out the window goes that interpretation. God commands in the Old Testament, folks, the murder of basically anyone, children, women, men, it doesn't matter, who so much as looked at him wrong. I mean, it's pathetic. You can't save the Old Testament, just like you can't save the Book of Mormon. You can't save the Old Testament, guys. It peddles a tyrannical monstrosity that they claim is a loving God. If that's a loving God, what makes him any better than the devil himself? Sorry, but I don't call this truth Hertz for nothing. When something stinks to high heaven, it's time to let it go. And any attempt to try to cling to it is just to live in denial. And thus you're doing the same thing that the official 9/11 government story followers are doing.
You just don't want to believe your government could be that evil and corrupt. Oh, our government would never do that to us. Well, they've been doing it for decades. Snap out of it, or, join the Ringling Brothers circus or something and be a freak. Yeah, you might as well, because you're not human. If you can't face reality, if you must cling to delusions as an escape or a means to try to get through this crazy world, if you can't stand on your own 2 feet like a man or a woman and deal with the reality that this world is a bunch of filth and corruption, the problem's never going to get solved. You're actually contributing to the problem by harboring lies and delusions and wanting to live in a fantasy world. Oh, part of being human, or what's supposed to be human, is to grow up, become an adult, and learn to let go. Didn't Paul say, when I became an adult, I let go of my childish things? When I was a child, I did childish things, and when to cling to delusions, you're still doing the childish things. Grow up. Anyway, moving on to the Book of Mormon here some more. First Nephi 11:18 says of Mary, this is Mary, the mother of Jesus, "Behold, the virgin which thou seest is the mother of God." That's interesting. Mary is never called the mother of God anywhere in the New Testament. He got this statement from the Catholic Church, guys. That's a Catholic saying, calling Mary the mother of God. This error was changed in the second printing of the Book of Mormon with the addition of 3 words. It now reads, "the mother of the Son of God." The question is, which version is to be believed, Smith's original or the later corrected edition? Either way, the book can't be trusted. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if people can accept this stuff. First Nephi 11:21 reads, "Behold the Lamb of God, yea, even the eternal Father." Christ is not the eternal Father. According to the New Testament, he's the Son of the eternal Father. Another blunder in the Book of Mormon. Here's another one. In Alma 5:48 is found the phrase, "Yea, the Son of the only begotten of the Father." Whatever. So now Christ has a son. Hello, Mormons. Hello. Gee, I don't see the phone lines ringing here. I wonder why. No Mormons. Oh, actually, you know what? Now that I look at it, I do have a caller, come to think of it. Let's go to that caller. I don't see a name here. Welcome to the show. Can you hear me?
Hey, Charlie, good morning. Can you hear me?
Oh, hey, I didn't see your name on the thing, Mike. How's it going?
I'm doing good, Charlie. How are you, pal?
Yeah, hanging in there, buddy.
Always a great show.
Yeah, thanks.
Good, Charlie. Hope you're staying cool with that heat wave.
Got the AC blasted.
Keeping Yep, keeping busy, and that's some heat wave we've had, so I hope you've been able to stay cool.
Oh, it was brutal, but fortunately I was on the beach most of the time, so I was keeping cool.
Yep. And I'm glad to hear that. That tiny heat wave is good for one thing, and that is for swimming. And it's good for the gardening, too, actually, as long as it's getting enough water. And we were dry as a bone for quite a few weeks. Oh. Partial drought, but fortunately not a complete drought, so we're lucky. But, Charlie, I just wanted to get into you a little. Excuse me?
Yeah, there's kind of a delay. Sorry about that. No, I was just saying, what's up?
Yeah, regarding first the Bible and the Nephilim, the fallen angels coming down and mating, cohabitating with the earth women, and God rebuking them. So, you know, we first learn about that really from the Book of Enoch, or the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, and where the angels of God disclosed to him all of this as it transpired. And, of course, there were giants in the world as their offspring. And what happened was the giants were insatiable. After devouring all the natural foods grown in the plant kingdom, they devoured all that. The next thing, they were eating the birds, the animals, and then even people. And so it got to the point where it was so troublesome, the cries and prayers of all the people reaching up to heaven, that God had to do something. And at the same time, the fallen angels were rebelling against God and his order, And so that's how the whole mess started. So in the Old Testament, when we get to David slaying Goliath...
Mike, we got to cut to a break, but that's interesting. I didn't realize that was actually in the book of Enoch, you said?
Yes, in the book of Enoch and his other books, there's two of them.
Interesting. Okay, hold that thought. We got to cut to a break. Be right back, folks.
Sure thing.
All right, folks, welcome back. We've got our buddy Michael Anthony on the line again, herbalist from New York.
Yeah, that's interesting, Mike. I didn't realize exactly what the source of that was. I've actually never read. I've read excerpts of it, but I've never actually read the book of Enoch. And it is quite intriguing, actually. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. And since we're on the subject, for those who accept, the New Testament, I believe is it James or Peter who makes reference to the book of Enoch, quotes from it, and as though it was inspired. And so that has to make you wonder, well, how come that wasn't included in the canon then?
Yes, and well, Charlie, I think we're getting into the key of it all, because the book of Enoch, or there's two books. One is called the Book of Enoch. The other is the Book of the Secrets of Enoch. And the Jews, it was the very first book of the Bible, because Enoch was the seventh generation from Adam, the great-grandfather to Noah, father of Methuselah, grandfather to Lamech, who was the father of Noah. And so everything that he compiled essentially was the original Bible, the first book of the Bible. But after Moses, the Jews removed it. Okay, they didn't like Enoch. The Jews had their own hang-ups, especially with Moses. And one of the hang-ups was that Moses said no one can look at the face of God and live, but Enoch met God face to face, and not only lived, but he became immortalized, meaning he never died. And in fact, Enoch, since Adam and Eve were originally immortals in the Garden of Eden, there was no death, no disease. They were immortals, like the angels.
Right.
And then after being tricked by Satan, what happened was, they all of a sudden they discovered they were naked, as the scripture would say, and they covered themselves with fig leaves. Well, what really happened was they were no longer immortals, and they were trapped in mortal sex bodies, and that's why they were ashamed. And so we never learned that from anybody, because nobody really, all the authorities on the Bible, none of them know this. And so the fallen angels and Satan, they tricked Adam and Eve, and they took away their immortality and trapped them in mortal sex bodies, and everything else is history. That's how the whole mess started. So now Enoch, about exactly seven generations after Adam, he was a great guy. He loved God, and he was very ashamed that Adam and Eve, his great-great-grandparents, had betrayed God, even though in a innocent way. They didn't outright rebel like the fallen angels did. They were deceived by the fallen angels, but nonetheless, they erred in a very drastic way. And Enoch was very ashamed of all that. He showed a lot of love towards God throughout his life. And so God told his angels, Raphael, Gabriel, Michael, bring him to me. He's a good guy. I want to talk to him. So they escorted him up through the various heavens, and that's what the books are all about. His two books are all about his experiences with the angels, being toured through all the heavens up to the highest, innermost heaven, where God's throne is at. And at that point, God instructs Michael, because only Michael the archangel is allowed to enter that dominion, and he tells him to take Enoch and give him hour garments, meaning put him into a body like ours, so that he can stand before me, because the mortal sex body is so imperfect and impure that it just cannot take the presence of God. It will expire. It literally probably burn. And so all that transpires, and Enoch is now before God, and God talks to him and tells him how much he likes him and everything. And he said that his angels are going to take you through all my creation, show you how everything works, how everything is, how everything will be in the future. And you're going to record all this, and then my angels are going to return you to home, and you're going to dwell with your family for a duration of time, and you're going to write all this down into books and give them these books so that they can pass it on from generation to generation all the way to the end. That way everyone knows what's going on and nobody can say, but God, I had no idea. And that then my angels are going to take you back to the heavenly realms and dwell with us. And that's the history of Enoch, the first mortal to be immortalized after Adam and Eve. He's the very first man to become an immortal like an angel again. And so he sees with the angels, he sees the realm where a lot of the fallen angels ended up after the rebellion and mating with earth women. And the soldiers of the fallen angels were called Gregories. And they were praying to Enoch on his way up to heaven if he could put a good word in for them to the Almighty himself. And Enoch says, what, are you kidding me? A little guy like me and you great beings, and you want me to put a word in for you? And that's how bad it was for the fallen angels.
You there, Mike?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you just broke there. Or did you finish? It sounded like you cut off.
Okay. I probably did, Charlie. I may have a bad phone connection. And so the fallen angels are totally cut off from God. No mercy being shown to them for what they had done. And yet, with us as men, descendants of Adam and Eve, we can err against God and be forgiven every time, as long as we truly repent. We can't keep making the same errors and sinning against God and expect forgiveness every time. But as long as
a Zionist Jew banker, they can do anything.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And they're in good terms with God, but we know their God is Lucifer, and that's why they can get away with all that and be in good terms with God. They're God still. And so now with the time frame of Moses, and Moses sends Joshua into Canaan. Canaan comes back spying on the Canaanites and reports that we're like grasshoppers next to those people. They were all giants. And then again with the king of Bashan, who it was after I think he was before the Canaanites or after the Canaanites, when he was another giant. His bed was so many cubits long, which equates to about 14 feet long and 6 feet wide.
Yeah, he's mentioned in the Old Testament.
Right. And so clearly the Old Testament is making it clear that giants were still dwelling. David slays Goliath, and then in David's later years, Goliath's brothers were slain by more of David's soldiers, all giants.
You know, for those listening not familiar with this, there's no question there were giants in ancient times. You know, people that were anywhere from 9 to 12 feet tall. There's evidence that they were even taller than that, some of them. That's not open for debate. I mean, there's been Smithsonian digs that have found a lot of these skeletons. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, Charlie, exactly. And even taller, 14 feet even taller, and a lot of them were cannibals.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can understand now why God had no mercy on those beings, at least that. But then, no question about it, there's other contradictions, like, why did God have the Israelites slay animals in a sacrifice, where later on, through other prophets like Jeremiah, it says, I don't want any animals sacrificed, and I never did. I can't stand the smell. I just want people.
He said that in Jeremiah, yeah. And so the best you can say is that the text is corrupted. In any case, it's not infallible, like, church have drilled in their head. It's not.
No, not at all. You cannot rely on the Bible for all of your information pertaining to how everything was and is today, and what source from, because it's been tampered with.
But if you listen to your religious leaders, you must blank your mind and let us do your thinking for you. I'll tell you what, we're going to cut to a break. You want to hold on, Mike?
I'd be glad to. Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, great. Stick with us, folks. Be right back. Okay, folks, welcome back. We've got Mike Anthony on the line. I must confess my ignorance, Mike. I really got to read to round out my understanding of the subject. I got to read I've just had so many other things I've been researching that's been on the back burner for a while, but I do need to read the Book of Enoch. And I don't even have it. I've got to get a hold of it. I know it's on the internet, but I mean, I like to have printed copies. That'll assist with my research into the giant thing. What's that?
I was just going to say, Charlie, there's nothing to apologize about. You're a brilliant man. You've got a vast understanding of everything. But right, when it comes to these little fine points of how it was in those old days, it does take a lot of reference material before we can really get a good understanding of why God behaved the way He did back then.
Or at least to some degree, anyway. It doesn't answer all of the tyrannical responses that God gave. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it doesn't.
Or that God is alleged to have given.
That's right. Or God, the Almighty, has alleged to be given. The only thing I can maybe understand why originally He expected the Israelites to do the animal sacrifice in the very beginning was because that's what they wanted to do. That's what they were used to doing. They were like, well, all the other gods want it. How come our God doesn't want that? And it was in the age, and the zodiac and the ages are all real, and that was back in the age of the bull. Like right now we're in the age, going into the age of Aquarius. And during the Lord's time, it was the age of Pisces. And so the original Christians used the symbol of the fish, which is the Piscean sign. So today people may say, oh my gosh, that's occult stuff, devil stuff, but it's nothing of the sort. In fact, in the book of Enoch itself, God tells Enoch how God He went about creating everything from invisible, creating visible realms. And how He assigned order to the stars and everything, and He assigns the various beings to the stars, and one of them is called Zeus. And I can't remember exactly where it is in what chapter of the book. I'd have to look at it again, but it's right there in Enoch. Now Enoch, Jesus referred to the book of Enoch many times, so that's why His disciples did as well, because through the Lord, His disciples learned a lot about Enoch. Enoch truly is the original patriarch, and just a phenomenon of a man, and everything that he experienced, and his books are just great reading, very inspiring. The Son of Man, the term, the Son of Man, referring to the Lord, that's from Enoch, when he was shown by God that the Lord Himself, the elect one, was secreted away in the very beginning, and nobody knew about it. I learned this on my own through the Lord and the good angels when I was a kid. And so, as always, I was very happy as I got older and I found the book of Enoch to see this in that book, which just verified that I was sane and not insane. And so, Jesus, the elect, He was secreted away, and nobody knew about him. Only Michael the Archangel. And that way, when Lucifer, who was a great angel, and he considered himself the firstborn, and so he felt when he rebelled there was nothing God could do because God is just, and Lucifer, as the firstborn, was the rightful heir to God's creation. And so after the rebellion, when he told his father, there's nothing you can do because you can't break your own laws, and therefore I own this creation. And God then says to him, well, I got news for you. There is a firstborn before you, but nobody knew about it. And that's Jesus the Christ, who became Jesus the Christ when He incarnated. And that's why Lucifer went right at him, who's now Satan, goes right after the Lord during His incarnation, trying to prevent Him from succeeding on His mission. He tempts Him. He shows Him all the kingdoms of the world when He was fasting for 40 days. And He tempts Him and He says, look, all these kingdoms, they belong to me. But I'll give them to you if you worship me. And, of course, the Lord rebukes him. And so since Satan could not entrap the Lord and make him fail in any way, he set sights on killing him to try to prevent him from succeeding in restoring the kingdom of heaven in this fallen realm. And they felt they succeeded by his death, but, of course, the Lord accepted all that because He had to conquer death anyway, which was the ultimate enemy of mankind, all referring to immortality. You see, it's all about immortality and getting back to living like angels again. And so they couldn't stop Jesus even when they killed Him. He conquered death. He rose from the grave, and He went on to dwell for at least a year or two occasionally with his disciples and other people, all seeing him and talking to him. So everybody knew he was around. He was still around. And that's where the legends, the false legends come from, where, well, he never died on the cross because he was still seen afterward. Mm-hmm. But he rose from the dead, and he acted, and he still dwelled with people occasionally. And so Enoch was referred to a lot by Jesus, and when he spoke about Scripture, Enoch was one of the main sources of all that.
I just find it interesting that the book, the fact that it's being suppressed. I mean, I never even heard of it until a few years ago. Most people have never heard of it.
Right.
But it is referenced in the New Testament. Right. It's referenced. It's quoted from. There's no prophecy attributed to Enoch in the Old Testament, yet Peter quotes from a prophecy of Enoch, which is only recorded in the book of Enoch. So how can they ignore it?
You got it, exactly. You know, like, for example, God tells Enoch, this is the Son of Man to whom righteousness belongs, with whom righteousness has dwelt, and who will reveal all the treasures of that which is concealed. For the Lord of spirits has chosen him, God Almighty, and his portion has surpassed all before the Lord of spirits in everlasting uprightness. So, Jesus was purer than all the other angels, purer than any other created thing. He was the ultimate in righteousness. And the Lord says to Almighty to Enoch, in that hour was the Son of Man invoked before the Lord of spirits, God Almighty, and his name in the presence of the Ancient of Days. Before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of heaven were formed, his name was invoked in the presence of the Lord of spirits. A support shall he be for the righteous and the holy to lean upon without falling, and he shall be the light of nations. And so there you have it from Enoch. And that's right. They don't want us to know about this book because we can learn so much.
You know, that is very interesting because you don't have anything that clear in the Old Testament as far as, you know, a pre-incarnate reference to Christ. That's pretty interesting.
Yes, it is. It's beautiful. And the Lord himself, and of course he's referred to the elect one, and the Lord always talks about his elect, and that's all from Enoch. In those days shall the elect sit upon his throne, while every secret of intellectual wisdom shall proceed from his mouth, for the Lord of spirits has gifted and glorified him.
Wow.
And so it goes on and on. It's beautiful stuff. So when the Lord was with his disciples, and he taught them about how God sent his angels down and they sowed their seed, and while they rested, the enemy crept in, and his angel sowed the seed, and that the two seeds grew up next to each other.
And he's quoting from the book of Enoch.
Let them grow. To let them grow next to each other until the judgment day. Well,
the parable of the sower.
Yep, that there's a good seed from God, and there's definitely a bad seed from the fallen angels, and it was decided to let them grow together. And there must have been after the flood, where the bad seed wasn't totally destroyed. The giants were still around as Moses and Joshua and David encountered. And so God must have decided with the good Lord, let them grow side by side from here on out. And in the end time, during the judgment, we'll send the angels for the harvest to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Interesting. Yeah, like I said, I'll definitely have to check that out. If we can do a show on that sometime, we can just talk about the Book of Enoch on a whole show.
Sure.
Anyway,
absolutely, Charlie. And I just wanted to share that with you, Charlie. I don't want to hog up so much time, pal.
No problem. But I appreciate that because I didn't realize that was the source for that understanding of the Nephilim. I'm more intrigued now than ever to read that book because you only have that one mention in the Book of Genesis of the Nephilim.
That's right. Because they tampered with it so much. It's very difficult to get the understanding from that Bible. And I used to tell people that all the time. I say, Mike, how come you're quoting from this or that? It's not in the Bible. And I'm like, you people have to understand this Bible's been tampered with so many times.
Yeah.
But it says in the book, Mike, if anybody tampers with it, God will curse them. I say, yeah, you think that's going to stop the enemy?
You know, it always bothered me. Why would that word be mentioned once with no explanation of it and leave you hanging, wondering what the heck the Nephilim is? That's interesting. No, I appreciate your call, Mike, your contribution there. I'll have to look into this.
Thank you, Charlie. God bless, and I'll catch you later, and I'll keep listening. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, take care, Mike. All right, folks, short break. Be right back. Short break.
All right, folks, welcome back. Got another caller on the line, so this is our last segment. I'm not going to have time to finish these notes, obviously, but if anybody wants a copy, once again, just email me. I'll send them to you. Most of what I've been talking about is just basically minor issues. There's a lot more serious stuff with communism that I didn't even have time to get to. Very, very serious, dangerous doctrines such as blood atonement. I mentioned that yesterday. The idea that if you leave the Mormon church or speak against it, you committed the unpardonable sin, and the only way you can be pardoned is if you are killed, and your own blood will atone for that sin. And so they kill people who leave, the real extremists in Utah. They'll kill you. This has happened many times. And there's a lot of other crazy stuff they teach that I mentioned in my notes here. I talk about a lot of the evil Masonic connections, Masonic symbolism and practices. So, I'm not going to pick this up Thursday either because I want to get off onto something else. Wednesday, tomorrow, I got a guest. So I'm just going to end the Mormon discussion here. But again, if you want the notes, there's a lot more mind-blowing, bizarre stuff. Just drop me an email. I'll send it to you. Anyway, let's go at this time to our caller here. Mark in Wisconsin. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hey, thanks a lot. Hey, I just got back from Ireland, and I wondered what you knew about the New Grange Mounds. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I know that there's a lot of connections between those and some structures here in New England. A lot of close parallels. You're talking about the...
We went.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that they have, like...
I went to...
the beehive constructions, the beehive roofs. Yeah. There's a lot of structures here in New England that very closely parallel that. And they've actually found some Ogam inscriptions in New England, in fact, all over the U.S., but quite a few in New England. And so, obviously, there's a connection there. The Celts were here in ancient times. But go ahead.
Right. So I went to the New Grange Mound, and I guess on the winter solstice they have it so that the sun shines through the middle of it.
Right.
And I asked the tour guide. I said, "Now, if you unburied this, what would the structure be? Would it be a pyramid?" And he said, "Yes." And it was very odd because you would go to the lobby where they would have the museum, and they would talk about the pyramids at Giza and all that, but they never said anywhere that these were all pyramids that were just buried.
Well, sure, they suppressed that. Just like I had that Bosnian guy on a couple months ago talking about the Bosnian pyramids. Interestingly, when they were first discovered, there was a huge media blitz. The media swooped down on it because they recognized these pyramids for what they were, and they were fascinated with it. But all of a sudden, there was a complete blackout, and now the think tanks and academia stepped forward and said, nope, they're not pyramids, just ignore it, don't pay attention. And so obediently, all the media now backed away, and, it's unbelievable. They want to control everything. But, you're right. This is what goes on. The same thing here in New England. These structures that closely parallel the ones in Ireland. You're not allowed to discuss these connections, even though they're very clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's almost as if they sent high priests out from all over the world. Now, they're saying that these pyramids, or these mounds predate the pyramids in Egypt by 500 years, but they're a lot cruder. So I'm thinking that high priests were sent out from Egypt to all points all over the world. What do you know about that?
There's actually several books that have been written on that subject. A lot of direct connections that have been made. If you want, drop me an email and I can send you some links on that. But there's quite a bit of information to substantiate that. You can go off in a number of different directions with that research. But again, this won't be discussed. In fact, it'll be frowned upon by mainstream academia, even though there's tons of evidence to show this connection. It's disgusting. But like so many other things in our modern world, they want to hem you in. They want to control your parameters of your thinking. Go ahead.
And what do you know about the Trinity? They've got this design where it's the three spirals put together, and if the spirals weren't in this grouping of three circles. If you looked at church windows, you would see them all over Ireland and all over the world, for that matter.
Yeah, it's an ancient symbol. All ancient cultures had, a quote trinity. The Egyptians had Isis, Horus, and Seth, and the Babylonians had their version. Sometimes they would represent it as one god with three heads, or one head with three faces, or whatever. But in the Christian context, that was the thing that got me fired. The Bible does talk about a Father, a Son, a Holy Spirit, but it doesn't refer to them as three separate deities that comprise one God. That's something that came in later centuries. But it is interesting because they adopted it from these ancient religions that have this triune God. Go ahead.
Right. And they've got over 500 phallus symbols in and around the Dublin area, and our tour guide said that they built those during times when there was no money coming in for the slave class, or for the peasants. They had them build it so they could keep them busy, so that they wouldn't steal from the lords. And he said, believe it or not, and I said, not. They don't go around building 500 of the same structures just to keep people busy.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
it's
have
ridiculous how they're suppressing
ridiculous theories.
Suppressing so much information down there.
Yeah, and what's amazing is they offer stuff like that, which is totally nonsensical, and yet when you come along with a much more sensible explanation that you can document with, historical references, they'll laugh at that and call it crazy. It's like living in the Dark Ages. When you said the Earth was round, you were ridiculed.
Yeah, it kind of looked like Babylonia to me. And the other thing, there were 6-pointed stars all over the place, all over churches. What do you know about that?
Oh, you mean the modern-day churches?
No, I mean churches that have been around there for 500.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Century.
Oh, that's an ancient symbol. Just because today it's attributed to, you're talking about like Star of David type things?
Right.
No, that's an ancient symbol.
The meaning of that.
The Jews came along in the early centuries of our current era and applied that to themselves, but that, it's not a Jewish symbol. It goes way back. The Hindus used it. Going back 4 or 5, who knows how many thousands of years beyond that, but at least 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, the Hindus were using it. So, and it was used by ancient cultures around the world. The Maya have it on some of their temple walls and some of their ceramics as well.
All right. And the Celtic cross, the circle going around the Celtic cross is actually means the sun in the sky. It has nothing to do with Jesus. And there's churches all over America with that on it.
Oh, sure. And again, that symbol is found in ancient Mexico. I used to have a piece in my collection. I wish I hadn't done it, but I traded it years ago. But it depicts a Mayan priest getting ready to face off one of the ball games. They had the ball courts. And this ball had a circle with a cross in the middle, insignia on the ball. That was used all over the world as well, a very ancient symbol. The Egyptians used it quite heavily, too.
Right. Now the cross, doesn't that mean the zodiac? And if you put the circle around it, doesn't that make up some of the modern-day crosses that they put on churches? Wouldn't that indicate that they're actually being controlled by a different religion altogether?
Oh, yeah. It's laughable that modern Christendom, mainstream Christianity condemns paganism when many of their churches are permeated with symbols that come from what they call paganism. That's one of the bizarre twists of modern mainstream religion. The very thing that they condemn, they're embracing.
Yeah, and almost every one of their holidays is on a pagan holiday.
Sure. Yeah, Christmas is the celebration of the birth of Tammuz, who was born around the winter solstice, whereas Christ probably was born sometime in September if you go by the gospel account. Sheep were out grazing.
Right.
Yeah, Easter is a celebration of another pagan festival. It has nothing to do with Christ's death. You can go on and on with that. Yeah, it's all paganism. And again, you mentioned the Trinity. That's a celebration of an ancient pagan deity. It has nothing to do with Christianity. Anyways, appreciate the call. I hope to get to Ireland someday myself. A lot of neat stuff there. Okay, take care.
Oh, yeah.
Have a great day. Got a great guest tomorrow. We'll see you then. Have a good day.